So these are main test levels we have identified for Sitecore content management systems that we develop. Uh, Within the test cycles, we will be using different test types, and these are the main test types that we use with the delivery teams or when we are working with development teams. We will be mainly at the first level, we will be doing unit testing and component level testing. Mainly developers will help us to write unit test cases using NUnit or any other unit testing tool. And then we'll be doing integration testing. Once these components are developed by different developers, they will be integrating these components to create a site build. Once that is done, we'll be doing integration testing. These are mainly happening in development servers and then in integration servers. And then we'll be doing regression testing. Regression testing is to make sure that the new code we are deploying to the servers does not break anything that are already there in this system. So in order to do that, we will be doing that in the UAT environment, user acceptance testing environment, once integration testing and unit testing is completed. Then browser compatibility testing is also a part of regression testing, and we also can do that separately. That is to make sure whether these products are working in different browsers and different devices, as I discussed earlier. And then we will be using different types of automation testing, like using Selenium WebDriver or Selenium IDE to see if the UI is working fine, then the functionality is working fine. And then we use QTP, Quick Test Professional. So those tools we'll be using to create automation test scripts. Why we are using automation is to make sure that our regression test, as we cater for many browsers and devices, there are lots of test cases that we need to execute. So in order to minimize the time, we are introducing automation testing, and also in order to increase the test score. Then again, accessibility testing, that is one type of the testing that we are targeting right now, because all our websites are compatible with double A rating for accessibility. So in order to do that, we have a checklist, which is Web Content Accessibility Guideline 2.0. And from there, we'll be executing all the double A rating checkpoints to see if our websites are complying with that. Then we do performance testing to make sure if the website can take load, and then for the concurrent users, we'll be using tools like Load Runner or JMeter to see if the performance are fine in these sites. Any questions? As Dilanka correctly said, from the traditional development, we have moved now to using test-driven development with Scrum. So if you take the traditional development, in early days, what we did was we came up with designs, then the developers worked on these designs and requirements, then they built the site, and then only the testing started. When the testing phase comes, we used to find lots of defects from the requirement itself, as well as from the functionality or UI perspective. So this is what we did traditionally, but now we have moved into test-driven development, where we have started writing test cases first. Once the requirement is there, we'll be writing test cases, and then we'll clarify the requirement. Then only the developers will start writing code. So when developers start writing code, they have clear requirements, because we have test cases as well. If they need to write code in order to pass these test cases, that would be easier for them. When it comes to quality assurance, there will be less defects if they write according to the test cases. Then we'll be checking, as Dilanka said, there's a demonstration at the end of the sprint. In that, we will see what are the improvements that we need to bring in to improve the code, or if the client agrees that they need to change some functionality or UI, we can accommodate that. So all these things will be rotated as iteration, and it is time box for 2 weeks. That is called a sprint. And this is what we do within a sprint. So if we take this is the pre-sprint task. And if we are actually targeting for this sprint, we will be doing our pre-planning meeting on Wednesday. So pre-planning is where we discuss all the requirements that can be taken into the next sprint. So that sprint will be starting from next Monday. So we will be discussing these requirements. Let's say that the requirements are coming as user stories. So for an example, let's say as a user, I want to log into a system. So in that case, developer should create a login screen with username and password, then log on button. So that is one kind of requirement. Likewise, there can be many requirements like 15 to 20 user stories for a sprint. So once these requirements are identified, we will be start writing test cases. So in the delivery teams that we identified within our organization, it's like 5 developers and then one QA guy will be involved in that team. So that is called a delivery team. So the whole delivery team will involve in this pre-planning meeting and discuss the requirements. Right after the meeting, the QA person will start writing acceptance test cases. So that is that are the checkpoints that they will do in order to pass these user stories. So for an example, as we talk about login screen, the QA guy will write, they need to enter a correct username and correct password. Then once they click on the login button, it should direct him to the login page. So these test cases will be written within these 2 days. And if there are any conflicts or if there are any area that is not clear, those will be communicated with product owner and then the client. Everything will be cleared out and all the test cases will be written by Friday. Then when the sprint started, there's a planning meeting. As Dilanka correctly said, there will be a planning poker in that to decide if we can accommodate all these user stories into this sprint. So let's say we have taken 15 user stories here. We will be doing a capacity planning for those user stories and see if we can accommodate them. So in this meeting, we can decide we can only take 10 user stories from these 15 because we don't have capacity. So we'll be taking those 10 user stories. And then the development will start. Testing activities also will go on parallel. So in the development environment itself, we'll be testing these. So when one developer works on the login screen, they don't have to create the UI from some web functionality as a dummy content. We can check if the functionality is working. So this testing will happen in the development environment. And if we can write automate test cases like unit test, we'll be writing it in the code base using NUnit or something. As a simple example, we can write correct username and correct password, then clicking the login button, we can write it as a test case in NUnit, and we can see if that is passing when it comes to UAT. So development and test automation will happen across these days, and on Thursday, development guys will be doing a UAT deployment. So in the UAT environment, all these user stories that we have taken for the sprint will be implemented. Then on Friday, QC or the QA person will start testing these user stories, 10 user stories in the UAT environment and provide his sign off to go for the client demo. Then the delivery team will get together and show it to the client, saying these user stories are completed. If you agree on that, we can sign it off. If not, if we need any improvements, we can bring it on. So these discussions will happen. So if client approves the sprint work, we will be keeping the UAT environment, and within the next following week, we'll be doing the regression testing. This is to make sure that nothing is broken in the UAT environment from these user stories that we have introduced. So there can be, let's say this is the sprint 20th. So there are work from sprint 1 to 19 in UAT. So this is UAT regression is to make sure that previous sprint's work is not broken from sprint 20. All these test cases, some of them would be automated, so we can run automate test scripts. Otherwise, some of the test cases we can run manually. So 5 days are allocated for that. And then from delivery teams, or there's a core team, they can do a code review and see if the code is fine, if they have written it the way that they have defined. And by Friday, we will be providing our sign-off. If there's nothing that we find in UAT as defects, we will be providing our sign-off on Friday. Any questions? Yeah.
This all are for the functional testing. So we see non-functional requirements like platform dependencies. Whether our application is using third-party tool, whether it's compatible with the client's real environment or UAT. Sometimes we may not have the exact instance created here.
Yeah.
So in Agile, that is SCRUM development in your company.
So what we'll do is if we need a non-functional as a performance test, let's say, if we need that kind of a requirement, we'll be taking that as a user story. So that will also lie as a requirement, and then we'll identify what are the tools that we need to use. And actually, if we can't perform it, like if we need third-party agency to do that, we can take that decision. If we can actually do it, we'll be doing that within this development cycle, because we can do that for the previous sprint work from 1 to 19, so that will be done within the sprint. When it comes to regression, even if we are actually planning for going into production, we'll be running performance testing in UAT as well.
So, what was the advantage you can see as by your experience? You know that thin slice methodology is there. The particular application we are developing a small functionality across the architecture. From the beginning, it's very small one. We'll say display a message or something, and then we apply it to the UAT and the staging, the UAT and the live real client environment.
Yeah.
I have not seen actually. I have just read understood that this is one of the requirements, that the non-functional requirement, and the early feedback we can take it from the before going to the implementation. That sprint is over within 2 weeks time. So when we face some kind of that dependency issue, so it will take some time to go for the next sprint.
Yeah.
Some people are doing some kind of approaches. So do we have any experience? So what's your vision?
Well, so this is the normal workflow that we work on. But if there's an urgency and if we find a critical defect in production, we can't wait until this timeline follows. So then we'll be having emergency deployments and then emergency code fixes. Once those code fixes are done, those are treated as special cases. So we don't have to wait until 9th day to do the UAT deployment for that. We will be getting the approval. So in those kind of scenarios, we need to get the approval from management. Why we are controlling like this is we find actually if we given the chance, people may misuse UAT deployments. Even while the QA guys are testing on it, development guys will go and do a UAT deployment. That is why we are controlling it. But we have chances. There are ways that we can do emergency deployments, but based on the approvals. So once the testing is done, these are the measures that we are taking to say our product is in quality. We will be measuring, so we will be capturing the defects that we find in any of the defect management system, like we can use HP Quality Center or Jira or Rational Team Concept as we use in our organization. So we will be tracking these defects. These defects will have different severity levels and then different priority levels. Based on these defects we find, we will be calculating these matrices like defect severity index, then defect density, Then for each sprint, we are calculating on-time delivery. From defect severity index, we will see what is the actual impact to the system from the defects that we found. For an example, let's say for a project there can be 100 minor issues like low severity issues, but in one project there can be 5 critical issues. So the impact from the issues is very high in the critical issue one. So that measurement will be given from the defect severity index. We can see how is the health in the project in terms of the severity of the defect that we found. From the defect density, we will be calculating how much defects that we found based on the size of the project. I think guys from Words already know this information. So for an example, let's say there is a website which has around 1,000 pages, and we have found 5 defects in that. And there is a website which has only 2 pages, and if there's a 5 defects in that, the quality is very less. So that calculation will be given from the defect density. By looking at the previous project data, we have come up with some of the values that should be as the benchmark for these matrices. So that benchmark should meet if we are providing our QA sign-off. On-time delivery is what we measure for delivery teams to see how many planned items that they have delivered. For an example, in the previous slide, we are planning for 10 user stories to be delivered. But if we are only delivering 5 user stories, our on-time delivery will be 50%. So we'll be calculating that as well. Based on these measurements, if these are on the range that we expect, we will be providing our QA sign-off. Then we can go for the production deployment. Questions? And these are some of the tools that we use in order to accelerate our testing and also to increase the test scope. We will be going into details and the practical sessions from the next one onwards. This is just a summary and overview of what we are doing in our organization. So unit testing, we are actually doing with end unit. And then automation testing, we are using Selenium IDE, Selenium WebDriver, Quick Test Professional. UI comparison, right? I think Anuradha is the one who introduced it to HSBC. This is a BBC. This tool is actually developed by BBC. This compares UAT user interfaces with the production user interfaces. If the content are equivalent, it will do the image comparison and say if these are fine. So this tool you can download from BBC website. And then performance testing, we are doing through JMeter, HP Load Runner. And for test management, like I told you earlier, for defect management and then the user requirement management, we are using Jira, RTC, and then HP Quality Center. From the next session onwards, we'll be going into details and show you how the unit testing is done and how the automation testing is done, how these tools work. So those will be a practical session. This is just an overview. So that is it basically. If there's no questions.
So, go ahead, sorry.
What is from the agile
This one.
part you get going. Right.
Yeah, but practically HSBC, the QA folks write the unit test cases, so
Yes, QA. Basically, we get the help from developers as well, but it's responsibility of QA.
okay, lucky developers.
Ajay,
I understand problem.
this one.
So they are explaining about that -3 days for the pre-planning
Very
Yeah. And planning meeting is one day. The planning meeting, the team will be proposing their estimates. The technical team also. The pre-planning, product owner and the Scrum Master and the QA representative will be there. So they have the good idea about the ethics that not ethics that mean user stories and everything. But when it comes to pre-planning stage, the technical team doesn't have some idea about some
Planning
stories. Yeah.
Well, let me explain. Sure. So in the pre-planning meeting, Scrum Master, Product Owner, and the QA guys will get together and discuss the potential requirement that can be taken for the sprint. So there can be many requirements. In the planning meeting, we can drop out some of the requirements. So these requirements, then we'll start writing test cases, QA guys. When we are doing this, all these user stories are in the requirement management system, which is RTC now. So anyone of the delivery team can go there and see the requirements prior they join into planning meeting. So with the test cases, they will be having a clear idea what this requirement is. When it comes to planning meeting, they can provide a better estimate.
That means pre-planning state. The pre-planning state that the development team is synchronously analyzing and reading understanding their requirements. Right?
Yes, not in the meeting itself, but within these days they will be going through the requirement.
People get them 3 days early. Otherwise, they can't
yes,
provide a good estimation.
And if there's, sorry, can I add?
Yeah.
If there's anything unclear when it comes to planning meeting, if there's anything certain requirement that is not given as the final, build team has the ability or they have the authority to not to accept the requirement and to go ahead with the rest of the stories.
No, actually, that is a good question. This is what we practiced earlier. We didn't have a pre-planning meeting. So when it comes to the planning meeting, we found that developers are not able to clearly understand the requirements, and then they are not able to provide a better estimate because of that. So then only we introduce this with the test-driven development, where we get the requirement early, then we can write the test cases as well.
One question is, you see that within 3 weeks time we delivered the particular deliverable, and after the UAT, we found some defects. So how do you manage that part?
Yeah.
How development team manage that part? Because after deliverable, after retrospective meeting, they will put another new sprint or fixing of these defects.
Well, this whole scenario will continue. So when they are developing this sprint, this pre-planning meeting will take place on this Wednesday, and they will get new requirements, and they will be going through that as well. And for the next sprint, they will be taking whatever the requirements that they discuss here. So that is already planned. If we find any defects from the UAT cycle, if based on the criticality, let's say we find a critical or blocker issue, production deployment will be cancelled. This defect, if let's say if the capacity is very less, we can fix it within shorter time period. We will be sending it to the same sprint. If not, we will be sending it to the next immediate sprint with the low and medium defects that we find in UAT.
Yeah, I think you forgot to say something like we are doing the developer testing as soon as we complete the task in the middle of sprint, right?
Yeah.
So that way we can figure out the defects.
No, but there can be issues that are coming to UAT as well from the integration. So if there is a defect in UAT, what we are practicing here with the development, we will be doing parallel testing. As he said, we are doing developer testing, and then QA guys will be writing automation script. So we are minimizing the chances that defects will come to UAT. But there are situations that there can be issues because of the integration, and from the previous code there can be issues. So if we find a critical issue, our production will be cancelled, and we'll be seeing if we can inject it to the current sprint. If not, next immediate sprint. But for the medium and low defects, definitely for the next immediate sprint, not for the current sprint.
As soon as the developer completes that done, we can mark it as completed. Then the QA guy will pick it up and do the testing parallelly in the middle of the sprint.
Yes.
So the defect which is realized from the UAT will be added to the backlog.
Yes. Product backlog. It will go to the product backlog. Then product owner, Scrum Master has to prioritize it. So if it is a low defect, the chances of getting that low defect fixed is very less.
Great.
What will be the normal time period for 2 weeks?
2 weeks. In Scrum, it says 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You can choose whatever you want. But in our organization, we have taken 2 weeks sprint.
Does the stakeholders join your meeting?
For the demonstration, they will join. But mainly the product owners act like a client, and on behalf of client, they'll be getting the requirements. So basically, in a software development company, it's like a BA role. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, guys, we have some questions provided. So we can
Another suggestion, Chaturanga, that we can ask from you that next Sitecore Sitecore meeting, what would you do? That can be.
So we have few options. We can go for more advanced one. Ravi, we are ending the meeting. Thank you for joining.